We're off to our next keynote speaker, and as I said, you're going to find him at incredible delight. I've had a few minutes to talk with him. However, I'm going to allow yet another one of my Student Advisory Council members. Oh, I guess I should tell anybody that wasn't in this morning's session. I'm Becky Porterfield. I'm the Dean of the Hale U.S. Bank College of Business. And so, and our faculty and staff are so tickled that you're here and taking part in case you didn't hear that little spiel this morning. But I have a Student Advisory Council that consists of all your organization's presidents, and so today each of them is participating in providing introductions to our speakers. So this afternoon I have the privilege of introducing Allison Heiler. Allison is the president of Phi Beta Lambda, our business club. And so Allison, if you'd come up and introduce our speaker, please.
Thank you, Dean Porterfield. It is with great honor that I get to introduce our next keynote speaker for Business Week, Jason Vines. Jason is the former top communications chief of Chrysler, Ford, and Nissan. During that time, Automotive News named him the top PR professional in the auto industry for 3 different years. Jason helped launch many well-known products for these companies, such as the Chrysler 300, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the Dodge Viper. He also led the communication efforts of the Ford Motor Company during the Ford Firestone tire crisis in 2000 and 2001. More recently, Jason has focused on his career as an independent communications consultant and author, where his most recent book was released in August 2015. We are very excited to have him here today, so please join me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Jason Vines.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Dean, and thank you, Jim. If you Google my name later today, just put in Jason Vines, and the opening entry says, "Whoever fired Jason Vines is right." So it's really great to see that every morning when I get up. It's really a pleasure for me to come here and talk with you folks. I'm going to leave as much time as possible for Q&A, because I think that's the most fun when I go to schools to see what's on your mind and get questions. Now I got a little quiz. What do these people and companies have in common? Adam and Eve, Brian Williams, Bill Cosby, Lance Armstrong, Barry Bonds, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, Bernie Madoff, Congressman Anthony Weiner, Lois Lerner, General Motors, Takata, Volkswagen, and Pinocchio. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Liars. That's right. Each had different outcomes. Some, because of their lying, they ruined their careers. Some went to jail. And the companies are losing tens of billions of dollars involved in their lying. I have 2 books out so far, and a 3rd one coming this fall, and I will get to them. Trust me, I shelf for myself very well. And they all have the same underlying theme in the first 2. Why do we have such a hard time telling the truth? Whether it's in business, sports, the media, universities, and of course politicians, who are the grand marshals of the liars' parade. The great author Mark Twain, who died about 100 years ago, said once, "A truth can put on its shoes while a lie goes around the world." That was before the telegraph and radio and television and of course the internet and social media, where lies go around the world in milliseconds and stay there, as you all know, forever. I'm a political junkie, but I promise you I'm not picking on Secretary Hillary Clinton alone. But in an interview last year, she claimed, when talking about immigration, that 3 out of her 4, she said all of her grandparents were immigrants. It took all of 20 minutes for Bloomberg to find out that was a lie. They went to Ancestry.com, and they went to the Census Bureau, and they found out that 3 of her 4 grandparents were born here in the United States. And it was really an unnecessary lie. But it seems that lying is part of the cause now. In the spirit of equal time, Ted Cruz, Little Marco, and the Donald have also told some whoppers. I think, however, the Donald is the most creative. The other day, a TV journalist was questioning him, saying, "You said you wanted one of your supporters to punch the protester in the face." And Donald said, "I didn't say that." They go, "Well, here's the videotape, and then show the videotape where Donald says, I think guy should get punched in the face. And Donald looked at it and said, I didn't do that. But that's the Donald. Lies in the business world, however, can oftentimes prove deadly. And that is the first focus of my first book, which came out in late 2014, Amazon.com. That book is called, and it has a weird title, and you'll know I have weird titles in my book. It's called What Did Jesus Drive? Crisis PR in Cars, Computers, and Christianity. You really have to read the whole book to get the meaning of the title. But I'm going to give it to you real quick. Back in the mid-90s, when SUVs were the most popular vehicles in the world, and they really still are, he was a retiree from General Motors. His name was Jesus Rivera. And I went to his home and I told him what we were up against. He was a retired General Motors employee. He had 2 SUVs. I told him about the dealerships burning and so forth, and customers' cars getting vandalized. And he said, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to stand by your SUV and let me take a picture of you. And I'll give you $500. He said, I'll do it. So a week later in USA Today, full-page ad, there was Jesus standing next to his SUV with a big headline, what does Jesus drive? We asked him. It exploded. The whole program cost us $25,000. We got $50 million in coverage around the world. And we stuck a skewer in the heart of these movements, these hypocritical and dangerous people that were going against SUVs. That's part of the reason for the name of the book. The other is, I went to work for a Bible company, Zondervan, the largest Bible company in the world, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I never thought I'd work for a Bible company. But I got a call from an old friend from Nissan who had become the chief marketing officer. And he said, I need your help. I go, what do you need my help? He goes, we tried to retranslate the Bible a few years ago, the NIV, which is the most popular Bible in the world. And they came out with a TNIV. And the evangelical community went nuts because they started neutering the gender. So it wasn't so many he's in the Bible, it was us and them and so forth. The leading Christian publications had a banner headline that says, Zondervan says God's a woman. And the evangelical community, including some very big leaders like Focus on the Family and so forth, ordered a boycott of the Bible. And Zondervan was on the ropes. But they had to do the translation, a retranslation, because when the NIV was born in 1978, started in 55, the movement to go to this NIV, that people could understand the language. But when it came out in 78, by this time, it was over 25 years old. And so the lexicon of our language had changed a little bit. Preachers were preaching from it and saying, and Paul was stoned. And all the 8th grade boys in the back of the church were laughing. Oh, Paul was stoned, he's smoking pot. No, he's not, he got stoned. So those were the examples of what they needed to change. And he says, but we can't have a boycott again. Can you help us? So I went on board, and we navigated through the process. We brought all those evangelicals in. You know, keep the old line, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That's what we did. We wanted them to be a part of the process because our enemies were our customers. And when we announced that we were going to do this, and we had all of our enemies on the phone, nobody complained a bit. And the next day, feeling very good about myself, I called the lead translator. His name is Doug Moo. And Doug and I had become very good friends. He's a very liberal guy, and I'm very conservative, but we had a friendship. And this guy's a Bible scholar, and he's just a genius. And so, you know, this is a launch. We haven't started retranslating the Bible. But I called him up. He's a professor at Wheaton College, and he's a minister, of course. And I'm kind of a smart aleck, but I called him up, and I said, hey, good job yesterday, because he led the press conference. He said, no, good job for you, too. I go, hey, can you do me a favor, Doug, when you're retranslating the Bible? He goes, whatever it is, we'll do it. I said, you know, it would really make my mom excited if you could throw my name in the Bible somewhere. Without blinking an eye, he goes, what do you mean? Vines is in there at least 19 times. So I had that going for me. So that's the reason I have the title, What Did Jesus Drive? The book is not about Jesus at all. It is about all the crises I've been in my career. Early transmission problems that Chrysler was going to put the company out of business. Jeep sudden acceleration. You remember the Toyota sudden acceleration a couple years ago? Well, we got hit much harder in the mid-1990s when Jeeps were going, quote, out of control. And the reason was people were putting their foot on the wrong pedal. But you can't blame your customer. And we finally found a way to make them not put their foot on the wrong pedal by putting shift interlock. So you had to have your foot on the brake in order to turn the car on. So we came to the fore. We had a crisis at Nissan when I joined. When I joined them in 1998, they were bankrupt. And we got through that. But then in 2000, February of 2000, Ford came after me and made me the head of PR globally for Ford Motor Company. That's a big job. Wow. I'm 40 years old and I'm the head of Ford Motor Company. I'm a big shot. And a week after I started, the Firestone tire crisis started. How many people have ever heard of the Firestone tire crisis? You guys were like 5 years old. I wish I'd never heard of the Firestone tire crisis. What was happening was Ford Explorers, for the most part, were equipped with either Firestone tires or Goodyear tires. Now what was happening was the tread of the tires was completely coming off of the vehicle. And what was left was the steel belts. And this didn't come off slowly. It came off in half a second. And these people are going 70 miles an hour. And they're not ready for it. And they overcorrect and they roll their vehicle. And they die. Injured or died. 271 people died. Thousands were injured. It started small in Texas. It was 2 Explorers and a Suburban. And then the affiliates started sharing the tape of the story saying, is this happening anywhere else in the country? And then it exploded. And it exploded in Venezuela. We were going to go down to Venezuela and we turned the plane around at Detroit Airport, our corporate jet, because we were told if we landed in Venezuela, we'd all be arrested. But as we got into this, it mushroomed. And Firestone said, there's no problem here. We had been investigating this, saying, what's going on with these tires? Because they had all the information. Back then, it's not what it is today. Back then, tires had their own warranty. Ford warrantied the car, every part of it, except the tires. That doesn't happen anymore because of the Ford Firestone thing. But we kept talking to Firestone saying, show us the data. And they said, no. Show us the data. And it's starting to go out of control. That this was the biggest story in the world for the summer of 2000. Peter Jennings of ABC, the late Peter Jennings, one night started off his broadcast with, he goes, tonight on Nightly News, the usual story, tires and fires. The fires were in California, the tires were us. The safety advocates, those wonderful safety advocates, who are really shills for trial attorneys, were saying that every Firestone tire that was black and round was defective. People were panicking. We had a recall in August of 2000, and it was so poorly done because they wouldn't listen, Firestone. We told them they had to systematically say why this tire is good and why this tire is bad. And the safety advocates were stoking the fire. And so after our announcement, there was so much confusion. People with good tires, good Firestone tires, not the recalled tires, were going into the dealership, some crying, saying, I want new tires. And we'd say, the dealer would say, these aren't in the recall. Your tires are fine. I've been buying cars for you for 25 years. Give me some tires. And what would the dealer do? He'd give them tires, which meant somebody that had crappy tires had to wait longer. It was full hysteria. We had 60 minutes. We had 2 congressional hearings in which Firestone lied and lied and lied. The fact is, the people that uncovered the problem was Ford Motor Company. We finally got the data from Firestone, only after NHTSA demanded the data and said give it to Ford as well. But then we went to war. 2 companies that had been together for 100 years, Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone, used to camp out with Thomas Edison and smoke cigarettes and drink beer and shoot things. And here they were. Billy Ford is the chairman of Ford Motor Company. His mother's maiden name is Firestone. But here they were at each other's neck. We didn't want that to happen. Early on in the crisis, before it got white hot, we had established what we called guiding principles. You'll hear, when you get into the world of business, you'll hear about crisis manuals, and you'll have expensive firms come in and want a bunch of money to give you a crisis manual, and they get done and they go up on the shelf and they gain a lot of dust and they're never used. We established 4 guiding principles from which all decisions, all actions we would make. And I know them well because I wrote them. We came to them together as an executive team, but I was the one with the big 3 in paper and the magic marker. And those 4 guiding principles, number 1, the safety and satisfaction of our customer is paramount. Full stop. Number 2, we'll work around the clock and around the globe to find replacement tires. You just can't put any tire on a vehicle. Number 3, and this is important, we'll communicate openly and honestly at all times. We will never speculate. That is a hand grenade. And we will never lie. That's suicide. I wish Firestone would have done that. And surprisingly, our 4th guiding principle was protect Firestone. Now, all these people later go, you're fighting each other. I go, that was our 4th guiding principle. We're not going to let any financial implications, any legal implications, as what I mean by that, lawsuits, none of those 2 will top any of these 4. We will not violate them. And we stuck to it. Well, we made this recall with Firestone, even though it was their recall. We paid for half of it because we wanted it to go quickly. And then we kept investigating to see if the other Firestone tires that were made at the other Firestone plants. There were 3 Firestone plants that made this tire. We kept looking at those. Are those really good? And we had scientific analysis and so forth. And by the spring of 2001, by May, our top engineer came into Jack Nasser's office, the CEO, and I was with Jack. He says, we've done our analysis of the tires. And here's the conclusion. They're bad. They're just a year later bad. And you go, well, what's going to happen? He goes, we're getting into the summer. Heat is the enemy of a tire. That's when all of these deaths occurred, in the summertime and in hot climates, Texas, Arizona primarily. He goes, it's our estimation that 8 people will die this summer. And Jack looked at me, he goes, this is the hardest and easiest decision we'll ever make. I said, yep, we got to get these tires. He goes, you know we're going to get fired for this. I said, it's all right. I need a break. We were going to meet with Firestone, but unfortunately, before that meeting, to show them the science behind this, that we weren't trying to throw them under the bus. We were going to fly down to Nashville, their headquarters, and say, here's the science. This isn't guessing. And before we could get there, our lovely chairman, Bill Ford, leaked the story, I don't know why, to the New York Times. And so the story came out on the Friday before our Monday meeting. Firestone went berserk. We still went down to Nashville that Monday. We met with them. We showed them our scientific analysis. It took us 10 minutes. They asked for a timeout. They went out of the room, and 2 minutes later, they came in with a letter and handed it to us, firing us.